Deep in the Alaskan wilderness, where the rivers roar louder than your uncle at Thanksgiving dinner and the air is fresher than a mountain monk's breath, an epic event unfolds every year. It is a battle, a feast, a drama, and an absolute buffet of chaos. This is the Great Salmon Run, a migration so intense that if fish had resumes, surviving this event would be listed under extreme endurance athlete and dodged death 17,000 times. For millions of Pacific salmon, this is not just a casual swim upstream. It is their final mission, their grand act of defiance against the forces of nature, predators, and let's face it, terrible luck. After spending years in the ocean getting fat and confident, these fish suddenly feel the overwhelming urge to go back home, like college kids who run out of money and return to their parents' basement. But this homecoming is no family reunion. It is a one-way trip to lay eggs, spawn, and then dramatically drop dead in the river like overworked interns. Picture this. A salmon's life is a tale of two extremes. For most of their youth, they cruise the open ocean, dodging sharks, seals, and fishermen who think they look good with lemon and garlic butter. But then, like a bad midlife crisis, they decide it's time to return to the very river they were born in. And the way they get there? Pure muscle, determination, and an alarming disregard for their own safety. First, they must leap up waterfalls like slippery ninjas, avoiding jagged rocks and gravity itself. You think human athletes train hard? Try jumping over raging rapids while being hunted by 900-pound grizzly bears with paws the size of frying pans. Oh, and just for fun, they stop eating. That's right. These fish swim hundreds of miles on an empty stomach, fueled purely by their stubbornness and terrible life choices. Their bodies start falling apart. Their scales darken, their jaws hook into horrifying shapes, and some even grow weird teeth, making them look like tiny aquatic goblins. If you ever wanted to see what happens when nature invents zombie fish, look no further. Now let's talk about the big, furry, salmon-loving bulldozers of this ecosystem, the grizzly bears. When the salmon start their migration, these massive beasts emerge from the forests like uninvited guests at an all-you-can-eat sushi buffet. For months, they've been surviving on berries, roots, and whatever unfortunate small animals they could catch. But now it's bulking season. Grizzlies can smell the salmon from miles away, their noses fine-tuned to detect fishy desperation. The moment they hear the splashing chaos of salmon hurling themselves upstream, they stomp towards the river with the enthusiasm of someone who just found out pizza is half off. And let's be honest, grizzlies are horrible fishermen. They don't use finesse. They don't use patience. They don't care about technique. They just wade into the water like an unsupervised toddler at a pool party and start swiping at everything that moves. Some stand up and slap salmon straight out of the air, sending them flying like slimy missiles. Others just stick their entire heads into the river and emerge with a fish hanging from their teeth like a bizarre sushi roll. The biggest, fattest bears eat like royalty, stacking up salmon like they're at a Vegas buffet. But the smaller, younger bears? Oh, they struggle. Watching a scrawny young grizzly trying to fish for the first time is pure comedy gold. They trip over their own feet, splash around aimlessly, and flail their arms in random directions, missing every single fish. Imagine watching a drunk guy try to catch a bar of soap in the shower. That's pretty much what happens. And if that wasn't chaotic enough, some grizzlies have the ultimate cheat code. They steal from each other. A big male will simply stroll up to a smaller bear, give them the "what are you going to do about it" look, and take their hard-earned fish. It's the Alaskan equivalent of someone stealing your fries while staring directly into your soul. But wait, this isn't just a grizzly bear monopoly. Lurking in the dense forests near the riverbanks are the shadowy figures of the wolf packs. Unlike the bumbling grizzlies, wolves prefer strategy over brute force. They don't dive headfirst into the water like some kind of furry torpedo. No, wolves are patient. They watch. They wait. They analyze the battlefield like military tacticians. Instead of fishing, they go for the low-hanging fruit, dead or exhausted salmon that wash ashore. It's the wolf equivalent of skipping the long grocery line and going straight for the free samples. Sometimes, they'll even try to swipe salmon straight from the bears, dodging between their massive legs to steal a fish before sprinting off into the forest. It's risky, but hey, desperate times call for desperate wolf heists. And the best part, some wolves develop a taste for salmon, which is rare for a species that usually prefers warm-blooded prey. These wolves start ignoring elk and caribou and go full pescatarian, choosing fresh fish over big game. Imagine a hardcore steak lover suddenly switching to sushi. It's basically that. Just when you think this feeding frenzy couldn't get any crazier, look up. Circling in the skies are bald eagles, those majestic, freedom-screaming symbols of America. But let's be real, these birds are absolute thieves. While bears and wolves are doing all the hard work, bald eagles casually glide in and steal their food like the ultimate aerial bandits. They'll snatch salmon straight from a bear's paws, dive bomb other eagles in mid-air to force them to drop their fish, and even chase ravens just for fun. They are the sky's version of pickpockets, except instead of wallets, they're grabbing slippery fish right out of someone else's dinner plate. But hey, it's not just bald eagles up there. There are also ravens, golden eagles, and even seagulls getting in on the action. If there's one thing nature proves, it's that every ecosystem has its own version of seagulls, and they are just as annoying here as they are at the beach. As the salmon run rages on, the battle for dominance escalates. Grizzlies brawl over the best fishing spots. Wolves test their luck in daring fish heists. Eagles swoop in for aerial assaults. The salmon, against all odds, keep throwing themselves upstream, unaware that their journey is basically an action movie where they are the main character and every other species is the villain. But this is just the beginning. The river is turning into a battlefield, and soon the competition will get even fiercer. The salmon run is more than just a feast. It is a war of survival, a natural circus of desperation, and the ultimate wildlife drama. And for some, this fight has only just begun. If Alaska had a royal family, grizzly bears would be the ruling dynasty. Big, hairy monarchs who strut around their kingdom as if they own it. And in a way they do. No one messes with an adult grizzly, and no one argues when one of these 900-pound titans decides that this riverbank, this fishing spot, and this specific pile of salmon belongs to them. But let's be clear, grizzlies are not dignified rulers. They are sloppy, reckless, and quite frankly horrible fishermen. Watching a grizzly hunt for salmon is like watching a professional wrestler trying to catch a butterfly with their bare hands. It's all brute force and zero finesse, and yet somehow it works. Grizzly bears have a variety of fishing techniques, and by variety, I mean they just keep hitting the water until something sticks. Some go for the big splash method, charging into the river, paws flailing, as salmon scatter in every direction like teenagers in a horror movie. This is great for intimidating smaller bears, but not so great for actually catching fish. Others prefer the ninja strike, standing still, waiting for an unsuspecting salmon to swim by, and then suddenly, wham! One massive paw swipe later, the fish is airborne. Some bears even develop their own personal techniques, like biting salmon out of the air mid-jump, or body slamming the water to stun the fish into submission. And then there are the lazy bears. These guys don't bother fishing at all. Instead, they stand at the top of waterfalls with their mouths open and wait for salmon to literally jump into their jaws. It's basically the bear version of a buffet conveyor belt. You can almost hear them thinking, "Ah yes, the food comes to me. Excellent." Of course, this fishing free-for-all isn't without its drama. Not all bears are created equal, and not all of them get to eat. The massive dominant males take the best fishing spots, while smaller bears are forced to either get creative or risk a beating. Grizzly bear society is a brutal, lawless mess where size and strength decide who eats first. The biggest bears, let's call them the river kings, claim the best hunting spots and defend them like bouncers at an exclusive nightclub. If another bear wanders too close, the dominant male will give them the look, a soul-piercing, silent threat that says, "You want a fish here? Over my dead body." Smaller bears have two choices. One, risk getting their ribs rearranged by a much bigger bear. Or two, steal food when no one's looking. Many choose option 2 and become professional salmon thieves. These young bears sneak up behind an older bear, swipe an unattended fish, and then sprint away at full speed like a raccoon stealing a slice of pizza. The boldest thieves even try the snatch and run maneuver, waiting for a big bear to catch a salmon and then grabbing it directly from their mouth before sprinting for dear life. This is the most high-stakes crime in the grizzly underworld, and it often ends with one bear chasing another through the forest, roaring in frustration, while the thief gulps down the evidence mid-run. And then, of course, there are the cubs. Bear cubs are tiny, fuzzy disasters who treat the salmon run like an amusement park. They don't care about food shortages or bear hierarchy, they just want to cause problems. While their mothers desperately try to fish, cubs run, wrestle, climb on top of each other, fall into the river, steal fish from seagulls, and generally act like hyperactive toddlers on too much sugar. Some cubs even try to imitate the adults by swiping at fish with their tiny paws, usually missing spectacularly before belly flopping into the water. And then there's the mama's catch problem. Every time a mother bear successfully catches a fish, Her cubs immediately launch themselves at it, turning a simple meal into a ridiculous tug of war. The mother bear, exhausted and probably reconsidering every life choice that led her here, just sighs and lets her cubs eat first, because fighting a hungry toddler is a battle no parent wins. But as the salmon supply dwindles, things get ugly. When there's plenty of fish, bears tolerate each other, keeping a respectful distance. But the moment the river starts running low, that fragile peace shatters. Fights between grizzlies are explosive, bone-rattling affairs. Two bears will size each other up, standing on their hind legs like sumo wrestlers before charging at full speed. The collision is so powerful you can hear the impact from miles away. Claws slice through thick fur, jaws snap inches away from vital organs, and the ground trembles beneath them. But here's the best part. Most of these fights don't actually end in serious injury. Bears are dramatic, and a lot of fights end after a few roars, some chest puffing, and a final "I let you win" retreat from the loser. It's less about actual combat and more about establishing dominance without unnecessary bloodshed. That being said, some fights do get real, and when they do, the loser doesn't just lose a meal, they lose their fishing rights for the rest of the season. One bad fight can mean starvation, which is why most bears know when to walk away. At the end of the salmon run, the winners are huge, barrel-shaped grizzlies with bellies so round they look like they swallowed a beach ball. These guys have eaten hundreds of pounds of fish, turning their bodies into walking refrigerators stocked with enough fat to last the brutal Alaskan winter. The losers? Well, they're not so lucky. Some bears, unable to catch enough fish, must survive the winter on scraps, berries, and whatever they can scavenge. Cubs who don't fatten up enough might not survive the cold, and underfed adults risk emerging in spring too weak to compete. But for the grizzlies who won the salmon feast, life is good. They waddle away from the river, their bellies swaying, knowing they just secured their survival. They fought, they fished, they stole. And now they get to nap for 6 months. As winter approaches, the grizzlies retreat into the mountains, their massive forms disappearing into the wilderness. But just because the bears are leaving doesn't mean the drama is over. Because while the grizzlies were busy dominating the rivers, another predator was watching from the shadows. And now, with fewer bears around, it's their time to feast. The wolves are coming. The grizzlies may have spent weeks bullying their way through the salmon buffet, slapping fish straight out of the river like furry boxers in a seafood match. But nothing lasts forever. As the bears waddle away, bloated and victorious, another predator steps forward, silent, calculating and patient. Enter the wolves. If grizzlies are the clumsy, chaotic kings of the feast, wolves are the assassins lurking in the shadows, waiting for their turn. Unlike the bears, they don't rely on sheer brute force to fill their bellies. No, wolves play the long game. They are tactical, opportunistic, and way too smart for their own good. For weeks, they've been watching from the tree line, silent observers of the grizzly madness. They've seen the fights, the fish thefts, the cubs belly flopping into the river like clumsy toddlers. And most importantly, they've noted every weakness. Now, with the salmon run winding down and the bears retreating into the mountains for their winter nap, the wolves finally move in to claim what's left. Here's the thing about wolves. They don't waste energy if they don't have to. Unlike bears who charge into the water like a football team tackling a buffet table, wolves prefer to work smarter, not harder. They don't chase live salmon through the rapids. They don't stand in the waterfalls hoping fish will jump into their mouths like nature's version of fast food. Instead, they let the river do all the hard work. By now, the salmon are exhausted. After weeks of battling against currents, dodging bears, and launching themselves over waterfalls, these fish are falling apart. Literally. Their bodies are rotting from the inside out, their flesh soft and falling off in chunks. Some have lost entire pieces of their tails. Others have weird fungus growing on their faces, like they just walked out of a zombie apocalypse. And the wolves? Oh, they love this. While the bears fought over the freshest, fattest fish, wolves take a different approach. They wade into the shallows, picking out the half-dead salmon like scavengers at a clearance sale. They snatch up fish that have washed ashore, gulp them down in 3 bites, and move on to the next one. No chasing, no struggling, just easy, effortless meals. But some wolves, some want more. Now you'd think wolves, lean, athletic predators built for speed and teamwork, would have the common sense to stay away from a 900-pound grizzly bear. You'd be wrong, because if wolves are one thing, it's bold. When food is scarce and survival is on the line, some wolves develop a very dangerous hobby, stealing directly from the bears. And this isn't just reckless thievery. This is a coordinated heist. Here's how the operation works. The bait team. A couple of young, cocky wolves trot up just close enough to catch the attention of a bear. They keep their tails high, ears forward, and give the bear a look that says, "Yeah, we're looking at your fish. What are you going to do about it?" The rage trap. The bear, being a walking anger issue wrapped in fur, immediately loses its mind. It roars, charges forward like an angry bulldozer, and the wolves take off running, leading it away from its food pile. The extraction crew. While the bear is busy chasing what it thinks is its problem, a second group of wolves slips in from the other side, snatches up 2 or 3 salmon, and disappears into the forest. The getaway. By the time the bear stomps back, out of breath and confused, the fish and the thieves are gone. This isn't a one-time trick either. Some wolf packs specialize in bear heist. They get so good at it that they do it multiple times a night, driving the bears into full-blown rage spirals. Some grizzlies get so frustrated that they just sit on their remaining fish, refusing to move, glaring at the darkness with paranoid fury. If bears could talk, you'd hear them muttering, "Damn wolves, sneaky little jerks, stole my dinner again." Here's where things really change. Bears may rule the daylight, stomping through the rivers like oversized sumo wrestlers, but when the sun goes down, this is wolf country. Wolves are built for the night. Their eyes glow in the darkness, their movements are silent, and their stamina is endless. If the grizzlies are like heavyweight boxers who win fights in the first round, wolves are marathon runners who never stop coming. And now, with the bears gone and the riverbanks empty, the wolves start hunting for bigger prey. Coyotes, foxes, even wolverines. They all know that when the wolves come out, it's time to disappear. But the wolves aren't looking for small game. They have their eyes on something much, much bigger. A wolf pack needs a lot of food to survive the winter. A single salmon might be a nice snack, but it's not going to cut it. As the salmon supply dwindles, the wolves start looking for fresh meat. That means caribou, but here's the problem. Caribou are massive, and they don't go down easily. A fully grown caribou is faster, stronger, and has a set of antlers designed to turn predators into shish kebabs. So the wolves do what they do best. They work together. Hunting a caribou is not a sprint. It's a war of endurance. First, the wolves identify the weakest target, an old caribou, a young calf, or one that looks a little too tired from migrating. Then the chase begins. Unlike other predators that rely on a quick ambush, wolves play the long game. They run their prey to exhaustion. One wolf will take the lead, forcing the caribou to keep moving. Every time the caribou slows down, another wolf switches in to apply pressure. They don't attack immediately, they wear it down. Minute by minute, mile by mile, the caribou gets slower. And then, the moment it stumbles, that's it. The wolves close in from all sides. The caribou, exhausted and unable to fight, goes down under a whirlwind of snapping jaws and coordinated strikes. The feast begins. For now, the wolves reign supreme. They've outlasted the bears, they've stolen fish. They've hunted caribou with ruthless precision. But the real test? Winter is about to slam into Alaska like a frozen sledgehammer. The salmon will be gone. The rivers will freeze. The easy meals will disappear. And soon, the wolves won't just be fighting for food. They'll be fighting each other. Because in the depths of winter, when hunger tightens its grip, the rule of the wild is simple: eat or be eaten. The cold comes in like an executioner. First, the rivers freeze, locking away the last remnants of the salmon feast beneath sheets of ice. Then the winds turn vicious, howling through the valleys like a starving beast, stripping the land of warmth and mercy. Snow blankets the ground, erasing tracks, hiding prey, and tightening its grip around every living thing. Winter in Alaska is not a season, it is a battle. And only the strongest, the smartest, and the most ruthless will survive. For the wolves, the time for easy meals is over. The lazy days of scooping up half-dead salmon from the riverbanks are gone, and with them, the last comfort of abundance. Now every calorie matters. Every bite of meat is the difference between life and death. In the deepest parts of winter, starvation is the deadliest predator, lurking just out of sight, waiting for the first sign of weakness. And when food runs low, the wolves do not fight other animals. They fight each other. For months, the pack has functioned like a well-oiled hunting machine. Every wolf had a role, from the alphas leading the hunt to the younger subordinates following orders. But hunger erases hierarchy. A wolf that was once submissive obedient, and content to eat last, begins to stare at its leader with new eyes. The moment an alpha stumbles, hesitates, or shows weakness, the whispers of rebellion creep in like frost on dying leaves. In the dead of winter, loyalty is conditional. It starts small, a younger wolf lingering too close to the kill, taking just a little too much meat before the dominant wolves arrive. Then comes the growling, the bared teeth, the challenges issued in flickers of tension. The pack senses the shift before it even begins. The old king is slowing down, and somewhere in the ranks, an ambitious rival is waiting for the moment to strike. And then one night the challenge is made. A younger, hungrier wolf, a beta that has grown strong in the abundance of past months, makes its move. The alpha stands its ground, but winter has drained it, dulled its power. The fight is brutal, savage, and merciless. Fur flies, fangs flash in the darkness, and the silence of the frozen wilderness is shattered by the sounds of teeth meeting flesh. It lasts only a few minutes, but when it ends, one wolf lies in the snow, bleeding, defeated. The pack stands still, waiting. If the fallen wolf rises, it may live, wounded, humiliated, demoted. But if it does not, the rule of the wild is simple. Meat does not go to waste. While the wolves fight their own wars, another predator thrives in the chaos, reveling in the desperation of others. The wolverine. If wolves are the tacticians of winter and grizzlies are the heavyweights, then wolverines are the villains, cunning, fearless, and utterly unpredictable. Wolverines are small, but what they lack in size, they make up for in sheer insanity. Their bodies are compact muscle, their jaws are designed to crush bone, and their temperaments are borderline psychotic. While other predators struggle to conserve energy, wolverines actively seek out conflict, as if fueled by a bottomless well of pettiness and chaos. A lone wolf can take down a caribou. A bear can crush a moose, but a wolverine will fight anything just because it feels like it. They are thieves, scavengers, and absolute troublemakers. A starving wolf pack might bring down a deer, only to wake up the next morning and find that a single wolverine has stolen half the carcass and dragged it into a cave, glaring at them with dead eyes as if daring them to come take it back. Even bears don't bother trying to fight wolverines, not because they can't win, but because it's simply not worth the trouble. A wolverine will fight to the last breath, and even if it loses, it will make sure you suffer in the process. But what makes wolverines even more dangerous isn't their strength or their aggression, it's their ability to survive. While wolves need packs and bears need fat reserves, wolverines need nothing but themselves. They do not starve easily. They do not feed. They roam the tundra alone, tearing through ice to dig out buried carcasses, hunting rabbits through deep snow, and surviving on sheer bloody-minded stubbornness. And in the dead of winter, when the weak begin to die, the wolverine thrives. As the days stretch into endless white, the true enemy of all predators makes itself known: the cold. It doesn't matter how strong, how fast, or how clever a hunter is. If they cannot find food, they will lose to the ice. The rivers are frozen, the prey is scarce, and hunger becomes an all-consuming force, turning even the most cautious creatures into desperate killers. The wolves, leaner now, more ruthless, continue to hunt, but each kill is harder than the last. Their bodies burn through the last of their fat reserves, and the weakest among them begin to slow, to lag behind. The pack cannot afford dead weight. A wolf that cannot keep up will not be carried. It will simply be left behind, swallowed by the snow, forgotten by the rest. The wolverines, ever opportunistic, find their feasts in the suffering of others. They pick apart the frozen remains of wolves that didn't make it, rip through snowbanks to uncover buried meat, and steal from anything that dares to let its guard down. Their secret weapon is their ferocity. While other animals calculate risk, a wolverine calculates how much damage it can inflict before being forced to retreat. Even the bears, once the undisputed lords of the feast, now lie helpless in their dens, buried beneath the snow, sleeping off their months of gluttony. They are safe for now, but should a desperate wolf, a starving wolverine, or a scavenging lynx find its way into a bear's den before the thaw, well, sleeping giants make easy prey. And so, winter drags on, a cruel and merciless judge, weeding out the weak, rewarding only the most resilient. Some will survive, most will not, but in the end it is not the strongest, nor the fiercest, nor even the most cunning that will endure. It is the ones who can adapt, who can suffer and still move forward, who can stare into the howling abyss of the Alaskan winter and say, "Not today." And when the ice finally cracks, when the rivers flow once more, and the first scent of spring drifts through the air, those who remain will rise again, stronger than before. Because in the wild, there are no victors, there are only survivors. While the battle for the salmon feast rages on the ground, with grizzlies throwing haymakers at fish, wolves running strategic heists, and otters behaving like hyperactive criminals, another war is being fought in the skies. High above the river, where the wind carries the scent of fresh kills and splashing water, the real thieves are circling. These are the masters of opportunism, the predators who don't just hunt their own food but specialize in stealing it from anyone foolish enough to let their guard down. Here in this high-altitude battlefield, bald eagles, golden eagles, ospreys, ravens, and even the ever-opportunistic seagulls wage an airborne war of theft, intimidation, and sheer reckless greed. Each has its own tactics, its own advantages, and its own unique way of being an absolute menace to everything below. Because down at the river, you can catch a salmon, but up in the sky, keeping it is the hard part. If there's one bird that thinks it owns the entire river, it's the bald eagle. Majestic, powerful, and with a stare so intense it could make a grown man apologize for no reason, the bald eagle is America's national bird. But don't let that fool you into thinking it has manners. These birds are the sky's equivalent of bullies who never learned to hunt properly because stealing was so much easier. Sure, they can catch their own salmon if they really want to. They have razor-sharp talons, a wingspan that can reach 7 feet, and the precision of an assassin when diving toward the water. But why waste all that energy fishing when you can just rob an osprey instead? Here's how a bald eagle's day job works. Spot an osprey working hard, diving repeatedly, and finally catching a fresh salmon. Wait just long enough for the osprey to lift off with its prize, struggling under the weight. Swoop in like an airborne mugger, screaming aggressively. Chase the osprey through the sky, harassing it relentlessly until it either drops the fish out of pure exhaustion or just out of sheer frustration. Snatch the falling salmon mid-air like the world's most aggressive circus act. This kleptomaniac hunting style is so common among bald eagles that over half of their meals come from stealing rather than actual hunting. Why fish when you can make someone else do all the work? This is not laziness, this is pure tactical efficiency. But bald eagles aren't just limited to harassing ospreys. If they see a bear drag a salmon to shore or a wolf sneaking away with a stolen meal, they will drop out of the sky like a feathery missile and try to snatch up the leftovers. These birds have no shame and even less patience. However, for all their arrogance, there is one bird that doesn't take their nonsense lying down. Where the bald eagle is a thief and a bully, the golden eagle is a straight-up warrior. These birds are built like flying tanks. They have heavier bodies, larger talons, and a more aggressive temperament than their bald-headed cousins. And while bald eagles prefer to harass and steal, golden eagles prefer to fight. Golden eagles don't waste time chasing ospreys for their meals. Instead, they hunt their own prey, and not just fish. These apex aerial predators have been known to take down foxes, mountain goats, and even young deer. A salmon, that's a snack. But when the two eagles cross paths, the sky turns into an all-out war zone. Bald eagles try their usual intimidation tactics, screeching, circling, diving at their opponent in a display of dominance. Golden eagles, they don't back down. And when a bald eagle realizes it just picked a fight with an opponent who actually enjoys combat, it usually does the smart thing, turn tail and fly off. But occasionally a battle happens, and when it does, it's an aerial dogfight straight out of a fighter jet movie. The two eagles lock talons in mid-air, spiraling downward in a deadly tumble, claws slashing, beaks snapping, their wings flaring as they struggle for dominance. And if neither gives up, they will literally plummet toward the ground, locked in combat, breaking apart only at the last possible second. Some fights end with blood and missing feathers. Some end with one eagle retreating with a bruised ego. And some end in an explosion of feathers as one bird hits the ground a little too late. There are no rules in the sky, only survival. If you ever feel like you work too hard just to have someone else take credit, spare a thought for the osprey. The osprey is a dedicated, hard-working, self-sufficient fisherman. Unlike the bald eagle, it doesn't believe in stealing. It actually does the job itself. With eyesight that can spot a fish from over 100 feet in the air, ospreys are precision hunters. They hover high above the river, scanning for the perfect moment, then dive feet first into the water, snagging a fish with pinpoint accuracy. But the problem? The moment they lift off with their fresh catch, an eagle is already watching. Ospreys are the victims of constant sky crimes. Bald eagles harass them almost daily, chasing them down and forcing them to drop their hard-earned meals. If ospreys had a union, they'd be on strike by now. But despite their constant harassment, they never stop working. Because at the end of the day, they know one thing. A bald eagle might steal from you today, but tomorrow another fish will always be waiting. While eagles rule by intimidation and strength, ravens rule by pure intelligence. These birds don't waste time fighting battles they don't need to fight. Instead, they manipulate, trick, and steal their way into getting exactly what they want. A raven will follow a wolf pack for miles, waiting for them to make a kill. The second the wolves start eating, the raven lands nearby and starts screaming. Not at the wolves, at other scavengers. This draws in competitors, coyotes, foxes, even bears. And as chaos unfolds, the raven slips in unnoticed, grabs a piece of meat, and flies away laughing. They mimic, deceive, and manipulate. They play both sides of every fight. And when a bald eagle finally lands to eat its stolen salmon, a raven is already waiting to steal it. At the height of the salmon run, the river is not just a place of hunting, it is a battlefield in the sky. Eagles dive, ospreys struggle, ravens manipulate, and even the dumbest, most clueless seagulls get aggressive over scraps. And in the end, no matter how many battles are fought, one truth remains. There is no such thing as an easy meal in Alaska. Because whether you're on the ground or in the sky, there is always someone waiting to take what's yours. In the frozen wilderness of Alaska, there is no mercy for the weak. Every bite of food is a battle, and every missed meal is a slow descent into oblivion. While the strongest predators gorge themselves on the spoils of the salmon run, there are those who fail to secure their place at the table. For them, winter is not just a season. It is a relentless, grinding force that punishes the unsuccessful and the unlucky. The rivers have frozen, sealing away the last of the salmon beneath thick sheets of ice. The caribou herds have moved on, leaving nothing but empty tundra in their wake. The great migrations are over, and those who did not prepare in time now face the harshest test of all. For these animals, starvation is not a dramatic, sudden event. It is a slow, creeping enemy that tightens its grip with every passing day. First comes the weakness, a gradual thinning of muscle and loss of energy. Movements become sluggish. Once powerful limbs tremble under the weight of hunger, and hunting becomes an impossible task. Then comes the desperation. A wolf that once stood proudly among its pack is now reduced to wandering alone, searching for anything. Bones, frozen carcasses, the scraps left behind by stronger predators. A bear that failed to fatten up in time grows restless in its den, waking too early from hibernation, driven by an insatiable need that the winter landscape cannot satisfy. Even the masters of the sky, the mighty eagles, are no longer fierce hunters but pitiful scavengers, reduced to picking at whatever remains in the frozen wasteland below. For the orphaned bear cubs, winter is a merciless executioner. A mother bear, bound by the brutal laws of survival, will abandon her weakest offspring without hesitation. If a cub cannot keep up, if it cannot gather enough strength to endure the long winter, she will leave it behind without a second glance. No amount of crying or following will change her mind. Her instinct tells her that raising a weakling will only waste precious resources. The abandoned cub, too young to fend for itself, stumbles through the snow in confusion. At first, it scrounges for food, licking at frozen berries and gnawing on sticks in a futile attempt to silence the hunger. It lingers near the scent of wolves, hoping to scavenge from their kills, but never daring to step too close. Some cubs, by sheer luck, manage to steal enough scraps to survive, but for most, the cold claims them before the season is over. As snow blankets the landscape, the smallest, weakest bears vanish into the endless white, leaving nothing behind but fading paw prints. For the wolves, the struggle is just as ruthless. Within a pack, there is no sympathy for those who cannot keep up. A strong pack moves with efficiency, every member playing a vital role in the hunt. But when winter stretches on and food becomes scarce, those who fall behind are no longer seen as family. They are seen as liabilities. A wolf with an injury, an elder too slow to chase prey, a young wolf unable to prove its worth. All of them face the same fate. The pack will drive them away, growling and snapping, making it clear that there is no place for the weak. The outcast wolf, once surrounded by the safety of numbers, is now alone in a world that has no use for stragglers. It howls into the night, but there is no response, no echo of belonging. Forced to hunt alone, it becomes a desperate scavenger, lurking at the edges of another pack's territory, waiting for the chance to snatch a forgotten scrap. But the winter is cruel, and a lone wolf rarely lasts long. As hunger overtakes its body, it weakens, slows, and eventually lies down in the snow, too tired to rise again. And just like that, the wilderness erases it, as if it had never been there at all. The skies, once filled with the dominance of the great raptors, tell a similar story. Bald eagles that once stole salmon straight from the talons of ospreys now find themselves too weak to defend their own meals. The fish are gone, the rivers frozen solid, and the wind offers no mercy to those who can no longer soar with power. A starving eagle does not glide effortlessly above the landscape. It struggles, its once mighty wings reduced to tired flaps, its sharp eyes dulled by exhaustion. When the hunger becomes unbearable, it is forced to land, searching the ground like a common scavenger. It watches wolves devour their kills from afar, too afraid to challenge them, too weak to steal. If it is lucky, it may find a frozen carcass to pick at. But even that is a battle. Foxes, ravens, and wolverines are all competing for the same pitiful remains. A bald eagle that cannot hunt is no longer a king of the sky. It is merely another desperate creature in a land that does not care. For some, starvation is not a sudden event, but a slow unraveling of everything that once made them strong. It begins with exhaustion, as the body burns through the last of its fat reserves, then turns to muscle, devouring itself in an effort to cling to life. The mind begins to falter. Wolves see prey where there is none, stumbling through the snow after illusions. Lone cubs cry out for a mother who will never return. Eagles attempt to dive for phantom fish that no longer exist. Madness and hunger go hand in hand, driving animals to make desperate, foolish decisions. And then, finally, there is stillness. A wolf collapses beneath a tree, too tired to go on. A cub curls into a ball, seeking warmth where there is none. An eagle lands in the snow and does not take off again. In the end, the wilderness does not mourn them. Their bodies become part of the cycle. Ravens and wolverines pick at their remains. The snow buries what is left, and the land moves forward without a second thought. In nature, death is never wasteful. It is simply another step in the unbroken chain of survival. Yet for those who endure, for those who manage to scrape through the harshest months, there is a reward waiting at the end. The ice will thaw. The rivers will run free once more. The salmon, always faithful to their cycle, will return to the streams in numbers so great that the water will turn silver with their movement. The bears who survived their long sleep will emerge from their dens, hungry and ready to claim their feast. The wolves who fought through the cold will howl again, their packs strengthened by the crucible of winter. The eagles, those that still have the strength to rise, will once again dominate the skies. Because in Alaska there is no final victory, no lasting peace. There is only survival and the endless, unforgiving cycle that repeats itself every year. Some will make it, others will not. But the war for life never ends. It simply begins again. The cycle begins again. The frozen rivers thaw, the ice retreats, and the land stirs awake from its long winter sleep. Across the forests, mountains, and coastlines of Alaska, the great predators emerge, lean from the cold but hungry for the feast they know is coming. The waters begin to swell with life, and the first shimmering bodies appear at the river mouths. The salmon have returned, but this is no peaceful homecoming. For these fish, this journey is a final war, a desperate last mission filled with ambushes, massacres, and obstacles so unforgiving that only the luckiest will survive. They are not just swimming upstream, they are running a gauntlet where every ripple, every shadow, and every splash might be the last. And before they even reach the rivers, before they get the chance to battle the currents and dodge the claws of grizzlies, they must first survive the monsters of the ocean. Because where the river meets the sea, the real predators are waiting. Before the salmon can even dream of swimming upstream, they must survive the ocean's most efficient killers, orcas. The black and white titans of the sea patrol the coastal waters, like silent executioners, moving in coordinated groups, their dorsal fins slicing through the waves. They know the salmon are coming. They have been waiting. Every year, these massive predators return to the same river mouths, memorizing migration patterns with deadly precision. This is not a game of chance. It is an organized slaughter. Orcas don't hunt randomly. They use strategy, teamwork, and intelligence that rivals even the most calculated wolf pack. Some drive the salmon toward shallow waters, cutting off escape routes. Others create underwater traps, using their sheer bulk to block schools of fish from moving forward. When the moment is right, they attack. With a flick of their massive tails, they send shockwaves through the water, stunning fish instantly. They don't chase individual salmon. They take down entire schools at once. Mouths open wide, they devour the easy meals, leaving the survivors in a state of sheer panic. For the salmon, there is no counterattack. They cannot fight back, they cannot hide, they can only move forward and hope. Some will break through the chaos, narrowly escaping the jaws of the orcas. They will swim for the river mouth, where they think safety awaits. But they are wrong, because just past the orcas, an army of smaller but just as relentless killers waits in the shallows. If the orcas are the generals of this war, then the sea lions are the raiding parties. These massive barrel-shaped predators might look comical when they are lounging on rocks, but the moment they slip into the water, they transform into relentless fish-hunting torpedoes. Sea lions are pure efficiency. Unlike the orcas, they don't need to strategize. They just need speed, hunger, and an endless stomach. They move like bullets through the water, chasing the salmon with terrifying agility. Their powerful jaws clamp down on fish mid-swim, crunching through flesh and bone in an instant. Some don't even bother finishing their meals. They take a bite, rip a salmon in half, and move on to the next. For the salmon that escaped the orcas, this is the second wave of the massacre. Some salmon dodge left, some dive deep, but many are caught before they can even enter fresh water. The river mouth, their destination, is littered with torn bodies and drifting scales, yet incredibly some make it through. They break past the predators of the ocean, battered but alive, and finally reach the freshwater streams. They think the worst is over. They believe they are safe, but the moment they enter the river, a massive clawed paw slams down into the water. Because now they must face the bears. If the salmon thought orcas and sea lions were bad, they haven't met the grizzlies yet. The great brown beasts of Alaska have been waiting all winter for this moment. Starving, restless, and ready to reclaim their throne as river gods, they march down to the streams like hungry kings arriving at a buffet. Some stand knee-deep in the water, slapping salmon straight out of the air like furry baseball players. Others dive face-first into the rapids, jaws snapping shut around fish that never stood a chance. The biggest, strongest bears claim the best spots, guarding waterfalls where the salmon have no choice but to leap straight into their waiting mouths. For the salmon, this is the final trial. Those who survive the ocean now face a wall of fur, claws, and gnashing teeth. They try to push forward, thrashing, twisting, dodging, but the bears are relentless. Each one must eat hundreds of pounds of fish to prepare for hibernation, and they have no patience for escapees. But while the grizzlies feast, there is still one more threat to come. Because above the river, circling in the sky, the eagles are watching. No meal in Alaska is truly safe, not even for the bears. Just when a grizzly thinks it has secured a fresh salmon, a dark shadow sweeps over the river. The bald eagles have arrived, and they are ready to steal. With a screech that echoes through the canyon, an eagle dives at full speed, its razor-sharp talons stretched wide. A grizzly barely has time to react before the fish it just caught is snatched straight from its claws. These sky predators have been waiting for this moment all year. While the bears do the hard work of catching fish, the eagles simply watch, wait, and swoop in at the perfect time. Some target the salmon still writhing in the water, while others focus on stealing from bears too slow to react. And if the grizzlies get annoyed, if they roar in frustration and try to swat the thieves from the air, the eagles don't care, because they will just come back for more. Through all of this, the orcas, the sea lions, the bears, the eagles, some salmon still survive. Battered, bleeding, and exhausted beyond reason, they push forward. Against all odds, they reach the spawning grounds where their journey began. They lay their eggs, ensuring the next generation, before collapsing in the shallow waters, their bodies breaking down, their mission complete. Their deaths are not wasted. Their bodies nourish the rivers, feeding scavengers, fertilizing plants, and giving life to the very ecosystem that tried to kill them. And so the cycle continues. Because next year their offspring will return, and the ocean will be waiting, and the predators will be ready. Because in Alaska there is no finish line, only the endless war of survival.